rebuild, to contribute to the rebuild here from Hurricane Ian, which was, once in a lifetime, hopefully for many of us. But a hurricane category 1 storm, we'll just go by definition, is any storm that has winds in excess of 74 miles per hour, can be up to a category 5 storms, which exceed wind speeds of 157 miles per hour. A typical hurricane is 300 miles across with an eye of 20 to 40 miles. In an average 3-year period, roughly 5 hurricanes strike the U.S. This needs to be updated because those numbers have grown quite a bit. We experienced hurricanes from Texas to Maine and Southern California since 1851. Close to 300 hurricanes have hit 19 Gulf and North Atlantic coast U.S. states. Of those Atlantic hurricanes, 45% landed in Florida and Texas, and hurricane season peaks in mid-August to late October. Don't be surprised if we experience hurricanes before then, anytime now, all the way up till, September, October, November. The next slide here really shows a map of wind speeds where the dark area, Layla, on the next slide, the dark area really shows, Southeast Florida and really the southern part of the United States is where hurricanes can cause the most damage, because those are where we get those real high wind speeds, out over the water. The next slide shows Hurricane Andrew. Hurricane Andrew was one of the biggest hurricanes we've faced since prior to Hurricane Ian. As you can see on this slide, this is a piece of plywood that someone had used as protection that split royal palm right down the middle. The bottom picture shows a 1x4 or a 2x4 piece of wood that went directly through a tree. So, if it can go through a tree, it's pretty strong. It also means it can go through windows and doors. It also means it can go through concrete block and some of those other structures that we have here in South Florida. So now let's get into the process a little bit. The process of an impact window and door project. And I also like to throw out there, it's really the process for any project that an association is going to go through, right? So we'll talk about who some of these key players are that an association should consider hiring and partnering with for any building-wide project. We'll talk about the specifications and the scope of work that an engineer that your association has contracted with provides. And then we'll talk about, once those specifications come out, then it becoming a real project here, how an engineer will schedule a pre-bid meeting and a walkthrough of the property. They'll go through the sealed bid collection process, and then this engineer will be able to provide you a side-by-side comparison of all the bidders and all the contractors so that the association can make an educated decision on who they'd like to contract with for the project that is up for discussion. So key players. Not everybody believes in them. I do believe in them, but not everybody believes in an owner's rep. An owner's rep is a great key player to align yourself with for any type of project. Why? An owner's rep will be a liaison between the association as well as the contractor. They are kind of like the quarterback, right? So they're going to kind of set the ground rules. They're going to create everyone's expectations, and then they're going to be a liaison between the contractor and the association for when questions arise, change orders, alternative scopes of work, pay requests, things like that. Clearly, you want to associate yourself with a really good attorney. That should be one of your key players. An engineer, of course, ultimately the contractor, and then the manufacturer of the products being used on your project. So let's go into the specifications and the scope of work. So when any project comes out, windows and doors, roofing, whatever it may be, an engineer will create a project manual detailing the project. This project manual will include key players, who your engineer is, who maybe your architect is, who your owner's rep is, who your contractor is, and who the association is. The Specifications will also include pertinent property information, maybe when the property was built, where it's located, the building code requirements that the project is going to need to conform to, and job-specific information. Within the specifications and scope of work, there will be a bid sheet along with many other things, but a bid sheet will contain the contractor's information. Okay, it will have the unit pricing line items for different items associated with the project. So for windows and doors, it may say windows a certain size that open and close a certain way are a line item of $6,500. Why does that? Why do we want that information up front? We want that information up front because in the event that there's a change order, for the better or for the worse, we have something we can go back to suggest, okay, they overestimated and there's 75 sliding glass doors instead of 80. And each one of them was $6,500. So we're entitled to a $6,500 credit times 5 units. So that really allows, again, the contractor to go back with the association and say, here's what the pricing is. If we need to add more, you guys knew about it months ago. If we need to take some away, you guys knew about it months ago. So it really keeps things fair. Also on the bid sheet, a contractor should be stating which manufacturer they specified to use for that application. So it's going to be who the manufacturer is, where they're located, and which product specifically the manufacturer has manufactured for this project. Also, there may be some alternative options that we can give. So on some of the engineering specifications, it'll say manufacturer XYZ is the specification, and then it'll say or an approved equal. So that could be an alternative option. It can be something that costs more. Why? Because maybe it has a higher quality paint finish. Maybe it has a better glass package. Maybe it is a system where the association wants us to value engineer a project, conform with the specifications, but give us something that costs us a little bit less. Right, so those are your approved equals. Ultimately, your engineer and the association will decide if that approved equal fits the specification and then can be used on that project. And then the project manual and the specifications will be sent out to a minimum of 3 bidders. That's totally the discretion of the association, how many bids they want to get and how they want to level them off. The next slide here is real brief. It's about the DBPR. So the DBPR is the Department of Business and Professional Regulation for the state of Florida. What does this website allow us to do? This website allows us to do a few things. Most importantly, it allows us to verify that a contractor is licensed and their license is in good standing with the state of Florida. It also allows us to verify that the products being proposed are certified by the state of Florida, and they're also in approved status as opposed to, let's say, expired. Okay, so you'll see across the top lots of different links, of course, and then across the side going down, you can read about the Florida Building Code if that's what you wish to do, or you would click on the product approval, which will take you to the next slide here. Okay. And then the next slide, this is just a brief example of a specific manufacturer. Across the top, you'll see the manufacturer is Marvin Windows and Doors, and it shows many different products that Marvin offers, from exterior doors that swing to sliding to windows that lift up and down that are stationary, whatever it may be. But it'll show the product approval number on the left, which is what we would have suggested to the association that we will be using for the project. And then all the way on the right, it'll show the status. Here it shows that the status is approved and it's not expired, and it should be good to go for permitting and for use on your projects. The other way on the next slide is the Miami-Dade County Building Department website. So for windows and doors specifically, windows and doors need to either be tested and certified with a Florida Building Code approval or with a Miami-Dade product approval, also known as an NOA, a notice of acceptance. Many people go by the Miami-Dade County kind of baseline because the Miami-Dade County codes are extremely stringent, right? They're based upon what happens to us here in South Florida and in the Caribbean, where the Florida Building Code really has products approved and information for systems that are used on a statewide basis. So here in the Miami-Dade County product approval search, we can click on applicant. It'll be a drop-down box. And again, we'll use Marvin Windows and Doors as the example. You'll click on Marvin Windows and Doors, you'll hit go, and that'll show all of the systems that Marvin Windows and Doors has approved with the product approval number, and then it'll show the expiration date. So these are just two really good resources for you to be able to look back to and make sure that the products that the contractor is setting forth for use are viable for your project. So if anybody has any questions about anything that I've said so far, I think that they can just put them in the chat and we'll go through them here at the end. But usually I stop here and ask if anybody has questions. So if they do, please feel free to share them in the chat. The next part of the presentation talks about your contract. So when we talk about a contract, what we have done at this point is we've selected our contractor, right? So the engineer and the board of directors, maybe the owner's rep, if the association is choosing to use one at this point, is going to go through and review the bids. An engineer and or an owner's rep will create a side-by-side comparison of the three bidders, let's use the example of, and we'll put what's included by company XYZ and what their price is. What's included by company ABC, what their price is, and so on and so forth. And then it'll be a grid. So this is called a bid leveling process. And this will show, okay, why is one company $2 million and another company is $1.9 million? What's the difference for $100,000? What am I getting from one and not from the other? Well, maybe you're not getting anything, right? And maybe their price is just higher and that's what they've decided their price to be. Or maybe they've excluded something that's going to cost $100,000 in this example, or it may cost $300,000, right? So that's the engineer and the board and or the owner's rep to decide, okay, this is why their price is what it is. These are the things they've included or excluded. And of the things they've excluded, what is that going to cost me in the future? Whereby, should I pay for it now or should I wait for that change order down the road? Ultimately, an engineer and or an owner's rep will make their recommendation to the board as to who they believe the most comprehensive bid award should go to. It's then on the association to decide clearly if they're going to take that recommendation or they have a different agenda. Once it's determined by the board of directors who the selected contractor is, then it goes on to the attorneys for contract negotiation. And when I say negotiation, there's lots of things to negotiate in a contract, right? Ultimately, price is a negotiation, pay terms is a negotiation, project length is a negotiation. So stuff like that will get talked about by attorneys and then will ultimately prepare a contract. Now, either a contractor has a blanket contract that they have used in the past and they can provide to the association's attorney for review. The association's attorney will go through it, have lots of clarifications they want to make, send it back to the contractor, and it'll be a back and forth, for however many times, costing everybody a lot of money and a lot of time agreeing on the language within the contract. The other way to do it is for the attorney to present the contractor with a contract that they would like to use for a project. The most common way, or a very common way, I'd like to say, is through an AIA contract. An AIA contract is a contract that is a blanket contract furnished by the Association of Architects on a national level. This is a service that we pay for annually to be able to go into, pull their contract off of their website, fill in the blanks, make changes to that, and create that as the standard moving forward. Many associations use it, and some others just like to use whatever form of contract that they have. The good thing about using an AIA contract is there's lots of exhibits within the contract or addendums to the contract that we can add on to the contract. For example, payment schedules, payment terms, payment applications, exhibits regarding what products we're using. And there's all of those things where you kind of just plug and play and fill in the blanks. So an AIA contract is a great form of contract, but it's not the only one. Obviously, your contract will talk about your pay terms, your pay schedule, timelines, and what the expectation should be of both the contractor as well as the association. Once you have all of that stuff worked out, lastly, you'll execute your contract. On the next slide, I have here, yep, that one. It's a little blurry, but what it is it's a cover sheet to an AIA document. And why I like using this is because there's lots of good information that you can fill in right here on the cover. So on the top, you can put in who your contractor is, who your architect is, your owner's rep, your engineer, and the association. So this will put all the players and everybody involved in this project all on one sheet of paper. So this is just a sample of the cover sheet. The next sheet I like to talk a lot about, as well as the following page. So this page here is called the AIA G702. This is a application or certificate for payment. So again, across the top, it'll have all of the project information. It'll have who the contractor is, the engineer, the owner's rep, the architect, whatever it may be. It'll have the project information. It'll have places to fill in the blanks for dates, for times, and it'll also have in there what application for payment this is. So what number payment it is. So if it's payment number 1, it'll be contract deposit to legally bind the contract. Across the left side, it'll have all of the information to fill in the blank. So it'll have contract sum. It'll have how much is being asked to be paid for on this pay application, how much retainage is being held back on this pay application, those types of things. Across the bottom in the box, that's real blurry, and I apologize, it'll have also change orders, additions, and deductions. So this is where we're going to keep track of if there's a change order, we're asking you to pay in anticipation of this change order and getting that approval before we take it upon ourselves, or before a board member says, hey, can you go and do this for us? This is now certifying that we have a request for a change, whether it be an addition or a deduct, and someone from the association is signing off that this in fact should take place. On the right, we'll have a place for a signature, and then these forms need to be notarized. And then on the bottom right, it'll be where your architect and or your engineer will certify that this payment request is good. So that'll be them giving you the blessing to go ahead and write the check. The next page is as important, in my opinion. Layla, you got that? Okay, so this is the G703. So this is what we call a continuation sheet. This comes right after that certification or that certificate for payment. So what does this form allow us to do? This form allows us to track the payments and what they are for throughout the project. So let's use the example of this pay request being a certificate for payment of deposit. So on the left, under column A, we'll have item number. Item number is 1. The description of work, deposit, and whatever percentage deposit you and your association have agreed on will be set forth within the contract. The schedule of value, so what that amount is. Work completed from previous applications, obviously that'll all be 0 because this is the first one. Materials presently stored, 0. Total completed and stored to date, balance to finish, and then the last column on the right will be retainage. Retainage is a negotiation between the association and the contractor. It's very common to have retainage being a percentage, 10%. So if the example is that we have $1 million contract, the deposit is 10%, that's $100,000. The retainage would be 10% of the $100,000, which would be $10,000. Thus, we would be asking to be paid for this pay application $90,000. And it'll show that on the bottom under grand total. And then all the way under column I, under retainage, it'll show $10,000. So on and so forth. So you'll use this page now, and you will add to this page every time a G702 or a pay application has been presented to the association. You will add on to this sheet. So this will keep a running tally throughout the project from the day it starts and the first pay request to the last one at the end. So you can go back and see description of work was deposit for the first one. The second one the contractor asked for was mobilization. The third one they asked for was when the windows and doors showed up to the job site. And all of those things get described in detail on this page. And this may be, you may have multiple G703 pages throughout a project, because you could have a big project that takes a year or two to complete. And every 2 weeks or once a month, a contractor is billing for progress payments. So for completion of work, and this could be, you could have many sheets here. And again, this is good because it shows, okay, what are they billing for? They're billing for a deposit, and the scheduled value of that deposit is XYZ. The retainage on that is 10%. So now you're going to see that in the retainage column on the right, that if we're holding back 10% on a $100,000 pay application, a $75,000 pay application, a $500,000, whatever it may be, it'll show that retainage all the way at the bottom through the algorithm has now added up to, in the end, 10% of the total value of the contract. And that ultimately will be what the contractor will look to bill out for, either throughout the process as they complete stuff and punch stuff out, or at the end. So again, I like to pause here in person when we do these types of things for questions on any of the stuff we've spoke about. So if there are any questions pertaining to the contract and or a contract negotiation and pay schedules and stuff like that, please put it in the chat.
We have a couple here. So someone asked if they can get a copy of these example contracts or a copy of the slides.
Absolutely. Feel free.
Awesome. And Jimmy also asked a couple of slides back when you were talking about the group of people who would be involved. He asked if there would be a project manager as well.
Absolutely. So we can also use the term owner's rep loosely and say owner's rep could also be called a project manager. So I like to go into my world of sports because I'm a freak with sports and call it the quarterback. So the quarterback could be the owner's rep. The quarterback could be the project manager. The quarterback may be the general contractor, right? So the general contractor has their subcontractors. Maybe they're the ones that you've trusted to quarterback this thing and not spend the money on a project manager or not spend the money on an owner's rep. Maybe you want to just say to the contractor, you're our one-stop shop. Be our quarterback, be our liaison. So absolutely, Jimmy. And thank you for asking.
And then the last question is, Julia asked if she can get a copy of the AIA continuation sheet.
Absolutely. So you can share this with anyone, okay. Or you can, Layla, you can send me Julia's contact information and I can send them these 2 sample forms.
All right. So Julia, if you send me that in the chat, I can do that. Otherwise, you can just send it out. That's it for the moment.
Okay. So moving on.
Then I'd just like to interject.
Sorry?
I said, I'd just like to interject that AIA stands for the American Institute of Architects, which is very prevalent in the whole United States. It's a national association that developed these particular documents, which are accepted by, the cities, the counties, and all of the departments, for approval when you submit these particular documents. So it's very important.
Yes. Thank you, Peggy. And I would also add that some these are subscription. This is something we have to pay for as a contractor to use. I've seen contracts presented to us. We've been a third party where we were not awarded a contract and we're able to help out an association as a resource, let's say. Many people, if they have their own contract already in place that an attorney has created, they'll use a version of this within. So it doesn't necessarily have to be by AIA, but these are the types of things that you should try to use or spin them in some way to use, because it allows for an easier process throughout. If you want to copy and paste it and put it on your own letterhead or make your own, so be it. But these are really good tools to use when you are doing projects that are small or large. So the next piece here I want to talk about is permitting and product selection. So if we could go to the next slide, I would appreciate it. So permitting and product selection. So there's a million products out there. Engineers have ones that they've used in the past that they've had a good experience with, as well as contractors. So we will see on invitations to bid a lot of repeat stuff because there are really good products out there that engineers have experience with and want to continue to use. So ultimately, an engineer will create a specification and they'll put on there whom the manufacturer should be and what the details or specifications within the product are. And that can talk about color of glass and glass performance as it relates to structural, as it relates to the energy code and stuff like that. But once they've specified the product and it goes in for permitting, the contractor will be responsible to get the engineer or the permit expediter the product approvals highlighted or circled with the specifics to the components and or options within the product approval that are being used for the specific application, right? So you may have a product approval that says, okay, it's a single hung window that's manufactured by ES Windows, and that's what it is. Well, that single hung window has different benchmarks of specifications or performance values that it can hit. And by using different reinforcements in the frame or by using different thicknesses of glass, we can achieve different values. Those are the types of things that need to be specified within the product approval that are being used. So an engineer will request from us or from a contractor the product approval to be highlighted or circled with the components that are being used within it. A draftsman or a draftswoman will create shop drawings showing the style of window or door, the location where it's being used, and how many of them there are. These are scaled drawings. This will show the ratio of glass to metal. This will show really a good idea of what it's ultimately going to look like when it shows up and goes into someone's home. A window and door schedule will be based on site-specific information. These are all of the things that are going to go into that permit package that we're ultimately going to submit. As I mentioned before, many associations and or engineers or contractors will use a permit expediter. This expediter is a company that submits the package and tracks all the comments, revisions, rejections, so on and so forth. Why we like to use them. These expediting companies or some of the bigger ones, they have relationships with the building departments. They know what they're expecting. So they're going to be able to provide a comprehensive permit package to the city so that that permit can get approved as quickly as possible and we can start that project as quickly and efficiently as we can. They also are the ones that are going to get the kickbacks from the city. So the city may say, oh, you forgot XYZ, or oh, you need to specify XYZ. And that's something that they can do. So they're the quarterback for the permitting process. All right. And I'm sure that there are engineering companies out there, and even on this chat, that may provide that service. So that's something that they can certainly speak to. And then your permit and your product selection also should be providing a sample of the finish, a sample of the glass, and these styles and these wishes will be submitted to the association for approval. Why do I like to talk about this? Because there is a white window frame or a bronze window frame. There's many different whites. There's many different bronzes. So what you want to do is you want to request a sample of the finish from the contractor that can get signed and dated for the association to keep on hand and for the contractor to show on hand, keep on hand. Excuse me. Same thing with the glass. If I told you that we were going to use gray low E glass, there are many different gray shadings of gray out there. And there are so many different low E coatings of which appear differently when being used. They may be reflective. They may have a color to them. So you want to get all that information and sample approved so that everybody can understand what's being used. And when it shows up to the job site, it is in fact what was agreed upon. The next slide here is, I would say, the most important, but I know I'm running out of time. The most important part of this is the installation. So you've gotten through the concept of, okay, we have a contractor, we have our key players, we have a contract, we have a product that was certified by the state of Florida or by Miami-Dade. Now we need to install that product. If that product is not installed properly, that certification that it comes along with means nothing, right? So when it comes to the installation, that's the most important thing. And these are some of the things when we talk about white glove service that should be taken into consideration. So first and foremost, when a contractor enters someone's home, doesn't matter what the project is, but specifically for windows and doors, notes on damage, pre-existing conditions, videos, photographs, all of those things need to take place. So an owner's rep, an engineer, a maintenance person, the property manager should walk through each and every unit with the contractor and a checklist and a mobile device or a camera or something so that damage can be noted, right? What we don't want is Mrs. Jones to come back after we installed her sliding glass door and say they broke my patio tiles. Well, we might have, but if we would have noted before that the tiles were broken, we may not be on the hook for replacing her patio tiles because all of that was disclosed before. So really do a good inspection. On all window and door projects, we like to work from when I say we, contractors like to work from the outside because we're disrupting as little to the daily, let's call it business that the association does, people in and out of elevators and hallways, cleaning, stuff like that. So we like to work from the outside. But if you're working from the inside because you don't really have that luxury of exterior, or the association doesn't want to pay for that mast climber or those swing stages, you have to understand that you're going to go through a ton of protection, plastic, zip walls, drop cloths, masonite, ram board, you name it. Protecting hallways, protecting common areas for both damage to reduce the amount of damage or dirt to rugs, stuff like that, but also for the safety of the people that are going to be walking through that building on a daily basis. When it comes to a window and door installation, window coverings need to be removed and stored properly. it's ideal that a contractor can come into a space and they can do their job and then they can leave. If window coverings are not removed, in our case, we'll take them down, but we'll be very clear in the contract that we're not going to reinstall them when we're complete. Furniture, do your best to ensure to your tenants, communication is key here, guys, right? So tell your tenants, hey, try to move your furniture away from your workspace in anticipation of your project starting on Thursday of next week. Plastic, all of the furniture gets covered with plastic, whether we move it or not. Why? It's an extremely dusty project, extremely. Plastic, goes on everything. It goes over furniture. It covers televisions. You just want to reduce as much of it as possible. Once all of that is complete, which I think is the most important part, then we can actually do the easy part, removing your windows, removing your doors, getting rid of the garbage, not leaving it in a common area for someone to bump into and get scraped. Waterproofing all of the openings, whether it's in the scope of the work of the window and door contractor, or it may be in the scope of the work of the painting contractor or the restoration contractor, to waterproof everything. Replace your bucks. What are your bucks? Your buck is a intermediary between the edge of a window frame and your concrete wall, right? So replace all of them. Some buildings may not even have them, but when they were originally put on your building 30, 40, 50 years ago, it was probably some cheap piece of lumber. Have it replaced in a window and door project with a pressure treated piece of lumber. That is that greenish algae looking moldy wood that you see in Home Depot. Why? Because we know that we experience a lot of humidity and we don't want that wood to rot out. So then go ahead and waterproof all of those bucks. Install the windows and doors. Use a high quality sealant, right? Make sure your contractor is using stainless steel fasteners if you're in a highly corrosive salt air environment, right on the beach. Because those fasteners, if you don't, will start to corrode and to compromise the structural integrity of them within 6 months. The inspection process, 2 ways to go about it. One is by having your contractor call the city on a regular basis. The city wants to come out and see the installation screws and see these bucks before a window can be completed. What does that mean? That means if we're working on your unit tomorrow, right, we need to call in for an inspection today before 3 p.m. to make sure the inspector is there tomorrow. But the inspector's schedule is that they'll be there between 9 and 5. So if they don't show up till 4 o'clock, and the rule set forth in the contract is that there's no noise after 5 p.m., that leaves the contractor only 1 hour to install that window. That's probably not going to end in a positive result. So the better way is to hire a special inspector or an engineering firm, like some of the one like M2A here on this call, who can perform these inspections. So these inspections can be done by a threshold inspector. That's going to save a ton of time. So that's almost like having a babysitter on the job site, watching the process go, creating an inspection log, and then presenting that to the building department once every couple of weeks. So it does 2 things for the building department. One is it doesn't have to have someone come out there and do an inspection every single day. It allows the contractor to work freely because they're not waiting on the inspector. And a lot of the time it takes the liability out of the building department's hands and puts it in the engineering company's hands because they're the one performing the inspection. Obviously, there's a cost associated with that, so full disclosure, but that's a real important thing and a good thing to spend money on, is having that engineer be on site doing inspections. Once all the inspections are complete, the furniture gets moved back to the original place that we found it. So we go back to all the photographs that we took and we say, okay, that sofa was under that wall. That's where it's going to go back on or about in the same place we found it. If it has it in the contract to reinstall the window covering, so be it. We don't like to do it. A lot of the times they break. A lot of the times they've been baking in the sun, and when you take them down and they're vinyl and plastic, they crack right away. We try to exclude that from our contract. And they may not even go back in the same location that they came from, because your new windows and doors that are impact, right, their framing depth or their framing structure may be a lot bigger or may be different than the existing windows. So those blinds may not be able to go back in the same spot. So know that and communicate that to your residents. And then lastly, of course, clean up your work area, get rid of your dirt, your debris. Again, it is an extremely dusty project, so know that. Next slide here is just some photographs, downtown Miami, some of the projects that we were able to contribute to, both from a manufacturing standpoint and an installation standpoint. And then lastly, to wrap up the presentation, I'd like to talk about the closeout process. The closeout process is as important as the walkthrough process before a project starts. So when closing out a project, again, doing a walkthrough, a representative from the association and a representative from the construction company should be doing a walkthrough together to understand what is left to be done to close out a project. Create a punch list, have all of your final inspections, and then before an association turns over a check to a contractor for any project, they should make sure that they ask for all releases of liens. Releases of liens comes from multiple different parties. Release of lien from the manufacturer of the windows and doors or of the roofing material, right? Making sure the contractor paid the manufacturer for the material so that the manufacturer cannot come back to the association to say, those are our windows and doors installed in your building, but we've never been paid for them. So get your release of lien from the manufacturer. Get it from the installer, so the contractor, right? If it's Best Roofing, make sure that Best Roofing is giving you a release of lien saying, we have completed our project. You're going to pay us X amount of dollars. We're not going to come after you for any more money because you paid us. Make sure that you get it from any other supplier. So in the window and door world, it's the screw supplier, the waterproofing material supplier. It's the windows and doors. It may be some concrete that we need to use to do our project professionally. Make sure you get a release of lien from any of the contractor's subcontractors. Okay, you want to make sure that the contractor you paid to fulfill this obligation has paid their people, so that their people aren't coming back to the association saying, we put those windows and doors in your building and whom we're working for never paid for them. No, you want to make sure you're getting a release of lien from every party. Okay. And then lastly, what I like to gift wrap a window and door project with is what we would call attic stock. Attic stock are things, they're pieces, they're parts, they're touch-up paint, they're wheels, they're bumpers on a window that goes up and down. They're the springs or the balance rods, things that we know can go wrong in the short term. Caps, covers, a window and door manufacturer is constantly creating new systems to compete with other manufacturers and to keep up with the building code that changes every 3 years. So like an iPhone, right? It changes often. So, this case on my iPhone, right? Maybe I might want to have 2 of them because when I get, it breaks and they no longer make it, I want to make sure that I have a replacement for it. So the things that can go wrong on a window and door project, ask for some extras, handles for sliding glass doors, right? May have a renter or a tenant in your building that just wants to rip that door open quick and he breaks the handle. I want to make sure that when the manufacturer re-engineers or designs their product, that if they change that handle, you want to make sure you have a box of those in storage somewhere so you can replace it as easily as possible. And with that, I would like to say thank you to everybody who attended. And to Peggy and to Layla, my Vanna White here today.
You're welcome. We advertised till 1:30, so do you want to take some questions?
I would love to.
All
Layla?
right, so we have one question here. Someone's asked, how would you organize in a condo, say a 2-story garden, in terms of standards, so that the front of the building does not become a circus of styles and looks and colors? Can a board stop an owner from changing anything from a single door to front doors and window?
So that's a very good question. I actually will suggest here that Georgette may even want to chime in on this, but an engineer or a window and door contractor should create a specification. Not every building is going to do a building-wide project. They don't have the money to, or they don't wish to. But you do want to make sure that your building doesn't look like a checkerboard when it is done, whether it's a 2-story garden apartment or a 30-story building in downtown Miami. So I can give this to Georgette for a minute here to talk a little bit about how she in the past has done it. But from my end, you create a standard and you say, okay, this is who the manufacturer should be. You can't tell them who to use if they're doing it on their own, who's going to do the installation. But this is the manufacturer. This is the series of product, as in which product that the manufacturer makes. This is the color of glass that we require if you're changing your windows and doors, and this is the color of the frame. But I'll let Georgette chime in on that as well.
Sure. Just really quick, we've done these before for a lot when we've done specifications, as Ben was saying, that you just kind of create a standard list that needs to be approved by your architectural committee so that they are using, as Ben said before, an approved equal, that it falls within your color listing. So you guys as a community would select those color standards and it would be a range. I'm an engineer, so I have zero artistic ability. So it would definitely be the architect who would be selecting those kinds of colors that kind of have that zen that you're looking to make sure that you create within the community. Then that way, even if they are following the specification after the engineer and the contractor leave, they're only choosing within that specified frame. Thanks, Ben.
Yep, my pleasure. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much. And another question here, can you discuss the specifications for coastal condo approved turtle glass?
Sure, that's a great question. And it's easy for me to, again, lean on Georgette, but turtle code glass, turtle code is misunderstood. And people think I'm going to call up a window company and I'm going to say, I want it to be turtle code. And then their expectation is it's going to show up and it's going to be green. What turtle code compliance has to do with, it has to do with an ordinance that a city puts in place, right? What it talks about is that a certain amount of light can be seen when it's dark outside or when it's light outside through the window and door if you're facing on our coast here, if you're facing the east. So what it has to do with is that when a turtle is nesting and you know, I don't need to go through all of that. Basically, when they swim off of the beach and they come on the sand, their brain tells them, based on the way the moon reflects on the ocean, that to go back to the ocean. So if the turtle sees too much light away from the ocean at a building that's sitting on the ocean, they're going to go gravitate that way. And it's not going to be a good result for that turtle in the long run. So you have to use different glass packages to meet turtle code compliance. It has to do with visual light transmittance. So it's the VT percentage, it has to be less than 45%. So you can use different degrees of tinting. Tinting is baked into the glass. So that's your gray tint, your bronze tint, your blue, your green. Coating the glass has to do with different low E coatings that are sprayed onto the glass at the factory. So by using different glass compositions, you can achieve turtle code compliance. So understand one more time that turtle glass is not a thing. Turtle code compliance is a thing, and different glass packages can allow you to achieve turtle code compliance. Make sense?
Yep, I think so. Then we have one more question here. Stephen says that this is a really valuable and relevant presentation, and he wants to know how climate change has affected the specifications for glass doors and insulation.
So thanks, Stephen. Thank you for your kind words. Climate change, I talked very little bit. I just mentioned there's a structural building code and then there's an energy code. So, you know, back in the day, in 2007, when I was starting, you know, here in Florida, running this company for the previous owner, impact windows were basic. Impact glass is the front windshield of your car. right? So it's two pieces of glass with a film in the middle, and it gets heated up and it creates a piece of what we call monolithic laminated glass. So that when it breaks, it stays together. It can rain while you're in your car. You can use your wipers with a broken front window and no water is going to come in. That's impact glass. With climate change, manufacturers started using what's used on a national level, which is called insulated glass. Insulated glass combined with laminated glass, which is impact glass, we would call laminated insulated glass. And what that is that's your impact glass, your two pieces with your film in the middle, a gap of air space that most times is filled with argon gas, and then an additional piece of non-impact glass. So by creating this insulated glass package, you're able to achieve higher energy efficiency ratings. You're able to reduce more heat from penetrating the glass using insulated laminated glass than you are with just regular laminated glass. So by using insulated glass and then additionally using low E or a low E coating, that's going to act as a reflective. So when the sun wants to hit the glass and pull in the heat, it's going to act. What low E is, it's tiny little metal particles that are sprayed on the glass at the factory. You cannot see them. A human eye cannot see them, but they move throughout the course of a year. And they will, here in South Florida, what they are designed to do is when the heat wants to hit the glass, it will reflect them and have the heat bounce out. So that's how you're going to achieve your highest level of heat reduction.
That's so interesting. Then this attendee here says they're having problems with bear claws. Does this affect the functionality of the hurricane impact windows?
They're having problems with what?
Bear claws.
I am not.
I
familiar.
don't
Maybe
know what
maybe Georgette. Maybe Georgette's more familiar with that. I'm, or maybe that question could be reclarified. I'm just not familiar with that.
If you could clarify that. They said bear claws. No. Okay. If you could clarify that, that'd be great.
Or yeah, or you can email me. You can email me after, and I can do some research if it's not something that I'm aware of, or if it's referred to in a different manner that I am aware of.
Possible. And then 2 different people have asked if the presentation will be sent out to all attendees. People really
Sure.
want your presentation.
Sure.
All right, perfect. Okay. That's it for the questions for the moment.
Okay, well, I'll close it out then. Ben, thanks again for the details. Awesome presentation. These forms are invaluable by AIA to use. Again, I want to recommend them as well so that you have a smooth process, because the inspectors and most people know about it. If it has AIA on it, they know you're using a reputable company that does use those forms and understands them. So just to finish out, I will be sending again a sponsor sheet out with everybody's information. And the next class will be June 27th. It's a M2E engineering hosted class called Ask an Adjuster. And there will be a flyer going out to everyone on this call today. I just want to say have a great summer, safe summer, and then just watch for those flyers for the upcoming webinars. Okay, thanks sponsors. Thanks everybody.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.